Okay, Parsha Illuminated, Parshas Vayishlach. So today we're going to focus on the episode of Yaakov, where he fights against an ish, a man, but that we understand to be an angel of sorts. And we'll read through the verses. We're not going to try to explain everything because there are many questions and many difficulties, but we'll try to bring out a few ideas. So this takes place in chapter 32, and Yaakov is preparing for his encounter with his brother Esav, but he's now kind of moving his family around. And it says there, Vayakam b'laylahu, he got up, he rose during that night, and Vayikach eshtei nashav, eshtei shivchosav, took his 2 wives and his 2 maidservants, and his 11 children, and he crossed the ford of Yabok. He crossed some kind of ford. He took them, brought them across the stream, and he took across what was his. He took across his possessions. And then, verse 25, in the Hebrew, Chafhei, Vayivaser Yaakov levado. And Yaakov remained alone. Vayavek ish imo, and a man wrestled with him, ad alos hashachar, until the break of dawn. Now, we don't know who this man was. It doesn't tell us really. But Rashi quotes the Midrash that says this was Saro Shel Esav, the prince or the guardian angel of Esav, some kind of angel appointed over Esav. Okay, we'll talk more about that shortly. What happens next? So they're wrestling, and Vayar ki lo yacholo, this angel saw that he couldn't defeat Yaakov. Vayiga b'kaf yirecho, so he touched the socket of his hip. Vateka kaf yarech Yaakov, and the socket of Jacob's hip became dislocated. Beheav kolimo, as he wrestled with him. Continues, Vayomer shalacheni, and the angel said, "Send me forth, let me go." Ki ala shachar, because morning is coming, and for whatever reason he couldn't be out once morning came. Vayomer, and Yaakov said, "La shalechacha kim berachtani, I'm not going to send you out until you have blessed me." Vayomer elav, and now the angel says to him, "Ma shemecha, what's your name?" Vayomer Yaakov, says, "My name is Yaakov." Vayomer, and he said, the angel, "Lo Yaakov Yomer od shimcha, your name will no longer be said to be Yaakov, ki im Yisrael, it will be called Yisrael." Why? Ki sarisa im Elohim v'im anashim vatucha, because you wrestled, you battled with angels here. Okay, so in the English translation they say an angel of God, or it could just be angels. Elohim, like sometimes can mean judges. It could mean something powerful. So it could just mean angels. V'ima nashim, and with men. Vatuchal, and you have prevailed. Vayishlach Yaakov, and Yaakov asked, Vayomer hagidana shemecha. He's like, "What's your name?" Vayomer, and he said, Lama zeh tishal ishmi. Why are you asking my name? Vayivarcho sosham, and then he gave him a blessing. Vayikra Yaakov shema makom Peniel, and Yaakov named the place Peniel ki ra'isi Elohim panim el panim, my song angel of God face to face. Vatinatzel nafshi, and I was saved. Vayizrach al hashemesh, and then the sun rose for him. Kasher avaras Penuel, when he passed Penuel, when he left this place, I guess. V'hu tzalei al Yericho, and he was limping. Al kain, therefore lo yochlu b'nei Yisrael skidan ashet, and therefore the children of Yaakov, the children of Yisrael, should not eat the gidan ashet. Here they translate it as the displaced tendon, so it's a part of the animal that's the same as where Yaakov was injured, somewhere on the hip. Sometimes we say sciatic nerve. I don't really know what that means, but this place on the animal, until this day, because that's where this angel struck him. Okay, probably many questions that popped into our heads as we read through it. So it gives us lots of homework to try to find answers to all those questions. But we're going to, again, focus our discussion on a few specific points. So there's some kind of struggle that goes on here. Yaakov wrestling with this angel. Clearly, this is symbolic of something greater than itself, and perhaps symbolizes an eternal struggle between Yaakov and Esav, or Yaakov and the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, represented by the angel of Esav. There's something bigger going on here. This angel is not able to bring Yaakov down. It says in verse 26, he saw he couldn't defeat Yaakov, but he could get him a little bit. He said, basically, I can't bring him down, but I can injure him. And he struck him. It says he touched him, but he injured him on the thigh, or on the kaf hayarech, the socket of the hip, and that's why we don't eat that part of an animal, because that's where Yaakov was injured. It's a way of remembering that. Okay. Now this prohibition of eating the gid anashe, that part of the animal. So it's like the socket of the hip, and there's a dispute in the Gemara as to whether it applies to only one side of the animal, the right side, or both hips, both sides of the animal. The Chachamim say, I put this on the source sheet, it's the top of the second page. The Chachamim say, it's the underlined part, b'yerech shel yamin u'b'yerech shel smol. So the Mishnah quotes that it's both on the right side and the left side that this prohibition applies. And later the Gemara brings that this opinion is unlike the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda said that it only applies to one side, and seemingly he says it's logical that it would be the right thigh that's generally more prominent, and the right side. So he says it's specifically on the right side. He seems to be assuming, right? That's what happened. He only got injured on one side. That's what it sounds like from the verses. And the Chachamim, actually, the Gemara has a line that says that the rabbis who argue on him, so they say, Me'achorei asi v'nashye b'tarvayu, that he came from behind and he struck him on both sides. And both sides became dislocated. I didn't take really the time to try to look into how they see that in the verse, but I'm sure that they're coming from somewhere. But here we have a dispute. It's a very practical halachic question in Jewish law of kashrus. Are you allowed to eat from the left side of an animal, of the gid anashe from the left side? And the rabbis in general say no, and the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda is yes. Now, so there certainly exists a dispute on that level, practical question: what happened and what are you allowed to eat? The Be'er Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Salant, writes that there's also something deeper to take from this discussion, and there's symbolism here as well, and he suggests the following. Now, as I mentioned, the battle here is between Yaakov and the angel of Esav, and the angel of Esav we associate also with the Satan, the Satan, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. It's what tries to lead us astray in life, and again, put there by God to challenge us, but it's that force that tries to lead us astray. Now, this angel is trying to take down Yaakov. He's trying to take down Yaakov, and specifically, he's going after Yaakov's emunah, Yaakov's faith in God, and he sees that he can't break Yaakov's faith, and therefore, instead of attacking Yaakov, he attacks Yaakov's yerech, his leg. Now, the leg represents the offspring. We say in Hebrew that we call offspring yotze yerecho, those who come from the leg. So the yerech represents the offspring. And other commentaries also take up this kind of idea that when he saw he couldn't defeat Yaakov himself, he struck him in a way that this would impact his offspring. And not so clear how that works exactly, but somehow the angel he didn't get to Yaakov himself, he got to his offspring. and he got him on the leg. The leg represents the offspring. And now he takes a really interesting novel approach to this. He says that we know that there are kind of two aspects to Torah observance. There's what we call ben adam lamakom, the laws between us and God, and then there's ben adam lachavero, the interpersonal mitzvos between us and our fellow man. You look at the luchos, the two tablets with the 10 commandments. So the right side is the ben adam lamakom. It has the laws between man and God. The left side is the laws ben adam lachavero, between man and his friend. So when it's looking at it that way, the right side is ben adam lamakom, between man and God. In general, the left side would represent the laws between man and his fellow, interpersonal. Now, there's a famous story in the Gemara and Shabbos. I put it on the source sheet. The story goes like this. Shuv Maisa Bega Yachad Sheba Lifnei Shammai. There was a certain Gentile came to the great sage Shammai, Amar Lo, and he said, Gaireini al Menashe Telamdeni Kol HaTorah Kula. Al Kishani Omed Al Regel Achas. He said, convert me on condition, I want you though to teach me the whole Torah while I'm standing on one leg. So Shammai was not going to hear that. You can't learn the whole Torah while standing on one leg. He took a builder's cubit, some kind of measuring stick, and he said, get out of here. Pushed him away. Then this man came to Hillel Hazakin, the sage Hillel, and he said the same thing. He said the exact same thing. And what happened? Hillel said, okay, I'll convert you. Here's what you need to know. Famous line. He said, Lach sani lechavrach lo saved. What is hateful to you, don't do to another. Zoe kol haTorah kula. That's the entire Torah. The idach perushahu. The rest is explanation. Zil gemar. Go and learn it. All you need to know, I'll convert you, is don't do to your friend what is hateful to you. Okay, that was probably the fastest conversion in our history. It takes a little bit more than that generally, so it's a kind of fascinating story just in terms of that. But how could you just tell him only that? Seemingly, there's much more to the Torah than just don't do to your friend what's hateful to you. He's really only telling him maybe that encompasses the laws of ben adam lachavero, the interpersonal laws, but what about ben adam lamakom? What about all the laws between man and God? So Rashi actually brings two interpretations. And in the first interpretation, Rashi says that your friend can also mean God. And he quotes a verse in Mishlei that implies that sometimes we can refer to God as a friend. Fascinating idea. But what it means is it can mean also what's hateful before God, what's hateful to your friend, don't do. And so this did encompass not just the interpersonal mitzvos, but also the mitzvos that are between man and God. That's one approach that one could take. Then Rashi continues, though, and he says, no, maybe it doesn't mean that. Maybe it means your actual friend. And he was only referring to the mitzvos that are between man and his friend, which really would leave us with this question, how could he convert just based on that? But fine, that's an important question that I don't have the answer for right now. But let's assume that approach. And that's the approach seemingly the Ber Yosef is going to assume here. And he says a very, very fascinating idea about this Gemara. If you understand that all Hillel told him was, don't do to your friend what's hated to you, he only told him about interpersonal mitzvos. You know why he gave him that answer? Because the guy said, teach me the whole Torah while standing on one leg. And what he was saying was, I only want one leg of the Torah. Tell me one leg of the Torah. And that's what Hillel gave him. You only want to learn one leg? I'll teach you one leg. One leg of the Torah is interpersonal mitzvahs. Don't do to your friend what's hated to you. The other leg, guess we'll save that for another time. But the Ber Yosef suggests, he says he heard this from someone, that the reason why Hillel gave him an answer that only dealt with interpersonal mitzvahs because the guy said, teach me everything on one leg. So he gave him one leg of the Torah. So according to this, there's two legs to the Torah. There's the right leg, which is like the right side of the luchos, the right side of the tablets. Those are ben adam lamakom. Those are between man and God. And then there's the left leg. The left leg is the left side of the tablets. Ben adam lachavero. The angel, seeing that he could not defeat Yaakov, he couldn't damage Yaakov's emunah, Yaakov's faith. But he could somehow get to the offspring of Yaakov and strike them on the right leg, get them on the right leg, and impact the ben adam lamakom, the relationship between man and God of future generations of Jews. And he says that that's what we observe, that phenomena carrying forward in future generations, especially, the last few hundred years, where the challenge for Jews has been the Yetzer Hara, the inclination has been in the area between man and God. Belief in God, belief in God's Torah, matters of ben adam lamakom are the parts where we're most challenged. Ben adam lachaver, what about interpersonal? So the truth is that we find that even Jews that are distant from Torah and from God often still excel in ben adam lachaver, in interpersonal, that these are Jewish values that have managed to stick with our people despite maybe people's distance from God. People are still generous and kind and virtuous in those ways. And so the Malach, the angel, this angel of Esav, he was in striking Yaakov on his right side. Specifically, he struck at the offspring of Yaakov on the right side, meaning in the ben adam lamakom, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda takes up the position that he was only struck on the right side, and so it's only the right gidanashet, it's only the right part of the animal that's forbidden to eat, because that's where he got him. But the Chachamim, the other opinion of the sages, of the other rabbis, is no. He got him on both sides. Even if he only struck him on one side, that's still striking him on both sides. Because a person's interpersonal relationships and the kindness that one performs is never going to be the same if somebody is has fear of heaven, has fear of God, has belief in God, faith in God. All of those things impact the way we act in the realm of interpersonal as well. He doesn't elaborate on this too much, but I mean, what he mentions is certainly true. Is it could impact how we feel when people are looking, when they're not looking. If people are looking, we're more likely to look good in people's eyes. If people aren't looking, okay, not as important. But if a person has fear of heaven, they know God's always watching, then that impacts how they act in all areas, and even in interpersonal, when they know that God is looking or not. But even more than that, certainly our bitachon, our trust in God, that it's meant to be, or God has a mission for me, or everything I have is provided by God. All the talents I have, all the money I have, all of these things are going to impact how we act, not only in the realm of ben adam lamakom, between us and God, but also in the way that we act with other people, in terms of our charity and our patience, and all of these things are impacted by our emunah, by our faith and our trust in God. And so even if the angel specifically hit him on the side of a ben adam lamakom, the Chachamim say that has an impact also on the left side, on the side of ben adam lachavero, in our interpersonal, and therefore that's impacting as well, and therefore both become forbidden to eat because both are impacted. Yes, Robert.
I'm just thinking about it, and just if you think about it in physical terms, if you injure your right hip, it's going to affect your left leg also, because you're limping, you're walking differently, it's going to put strain on your left leg. So it makes sense there too.
Okay, very good. Right, you compensate, and then it starts to hurt the other side. Very good. Okay, that's that. I like that.
I just have
Okay.
a comment as well. I mean,
Yeah.
it just makes so much more sense just to make a blanket statement so people don't make mistakes. Like they'll say, now which side was it? The left side, the right side, which side was it? So I mean, just to me, it's just blanket statement, nothing.
Sorry, I didn't understand what.
No, I'm just saying for the sciatic nerve, for the
Yeah.
nashet, is it the right side? Is the left side we can eat? So it makes more sense just make a blanket statement, say nothing. So because people might question, well, which side can I eat and which side can I
Right.
eat?
Right.
So yeah, so it just makes more sense to me.
Right. So I guess this might be sort of what you meant. I'm not sure, but in terms of understanding the angle of the Chachamim, of the the opinion that you can't eat either side. So that's what the verse says. It says Al king lo yochlu b'nei Yisrael gid anasheh. You can't eat the gid anasheh. Doesn't say which side. And the Rabbi Yehuda is saying though, but he only got struck on one side, so it can only be on one side. Okay, but that's right. That's more of a halachic and Talmudic argument to get into. But this is the symbolism offered by Rav Yosef Salant, the Be'er Yosef, that injuring the right side was injuring the offspring, was impacting the offspring of Yaakov in their relationship between them and God, between Ben Adam Lamakom, and how that will also impact the relationships and in Ben Adam Chaver, the way we act in interpersonal matters.
Question, was the injury permanent or just temporary? Did he heal from it?
It was temporary. He did heal from it. Because Vayavo Yaakov Shalom. He was healed from it. Okay. Moving on. So we mentioned Rashi's comment that this man was the angel of Esav. I mentioned sort of offhandedly that we associate that with the Yetzer Hara as well. We find in different midrashic sources, though, different ideas of who this was. Who was this ish that he was fighting? And so I put some on the source sheet. If you look in the second to last source, Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, so there it says that the angel said, let me go. And he answered him, I will not let thee go until thou tellest me what thy name is. Okay, different translations use different types of English. It's all just copied and pasted from Sefaria, almost all. So the angel said, Yaakov said, I'm not letting you go until you tell me your name. Now if you read the verses carefully, the angel never actually tells him his name, but this midrash at least understands that he did tell him his name, because Vayikra Shemo Yisrael, that he named Yaakov Yisrael, he gave Yaakov a new name, Yisrael, Kishmo Shnikra Shmo Yisrael, just like his own name. His name was also Yisrael, that the name of this angel was Yisrael. Okay, that sounds very different than he was the angel of Esav. Now we're saying his name is Yisrael. Very strange. If you look in the next source, the Talmud in Chulin, it says that one opinion says Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar Ka'oved Kochavim Nidmelo. He appeared to him as an idolater. Rav Shmuel bar Acha Kamed Rav Papa Mishmei de Rava bar Ula Amar Ketalmud Chacham Nidmelo. He appeared as a Talmud Chacham. So we have so many different ideas now. He appeared as an idolater. He appeared as a Talmud Chacham. He appeared as he said his name is Yisrael. He is the angel of Esav. So are these all just different opinions, or are these all maybe somehow the expression of one idea? So Rav Shimon Schwab suggests that really no, this was the angel of Esav, and this is the Yetzer Hara. But he has very many different appearances. He comes in many different forms. Sometimes he comes as Yisrael. He comes and he says, I am Judaism. I am Yisrael. Sometimes he comes, he says, I'm a Talmud Chacham. I'm a Torah scholar. This is what you should do. And that's what these midrashim are teaching us. That's what we're being taught here, is that we have to watch out and be on guard for the many different forms that the Yetzer Hara can take. And he points out, he mentioned something that we talked about last week a little bit, that the face of Yaakov is on the throne of glory. And he says, what does that mean, that the face of Yaakov? What's the understanding of that? It's that Yaakov is representative of emes, of truth, integrity. And again, that's a discussion why that is. We did a class about that a few years ago. But Yaakov is associated with emes, right? There's a verse in Micha, titeng emes liYaakov, give truth to, ascribe truth to Yaakov. We can read that as. That's the midah, that's one of the traits that's associated with Yaakov. And what we're saying is that sort of the God is the ultimate truth. That's why he has Yaakov on his is the holder of ultimate truth, and he has Yaakov on his throne, because Yaakov is the representative of emes, of truth. Esav is the opposite. Esav is sheker. Esav is falsehood, and but he shows himself. He pretends like he's emes, like he's truth, and he says that's what's going on here. The Yetzer Hara dresses itself up as truth when it's not. It dresses itself up as Judaism. For example, you have Christians who claim that they're practicing Judaism. You have I just had a conversation with somebody who grew up in a Christian messianic congregation, which means they practice some Jewish customs, but they're Christians. And but he thought he was Jewish because of that. And I asked him if his parents are Jewish. He said, yeah. But then I realized that he had a different idea of what Jewish meant. Just meant that they were part of this congregation, but not that they were actually descendants of Jews. So they, certainly that's an example of, and by the way, they're very good at trapping Jews who don't understand the difference and saying, oh yeah, this is Judaism too, but it's not, of course. It's completely not. And even within Judaism, there are so many different ideas out there of what's a Jewish value and what's true and what's not. And we need to go to the source of emes to know. We have to go to the source of truth, which is the Torah, to be able to discern what in fact is Yisrael and what in fact is a Talmid Chacham and what is not. And that's the lesson here. As we said, this angel, this struggle represents the struggle with the Yetzer Hara, the constant ongoing struggle, and these different explanations for what this angel appeared as are bringing out this idea, that this lesson, that we have to be watchful and mindful that the Yetzer Hara can appear in many forms, that we're challenged in many ways, and we have to be constantly on guard. Okay, now the angel comes and he, go back to the verses. So Yaakov says, I'm not going to go until you bless me. And the angel asks him for his name. He says, Yaakov. And he says, no, it's not going to be Yaakov anymore. Your name is going to be Yisrael. Ki sarisa im Elohim im anashim atucha. Because you here they translate, you have commanding power with an angel and with men, and you have prevailed. So Rashi actually understands that when he said Beirachtani, he said, bless me, what Yaakov was really telling the angel of Esav was, I want you to admit that the blessings that Yitzchak gave to me instead of to you, Esav, again, he's not actually talking to Esav, but he's talking to the angel of Esav, that they're rightfully mine. And he gets that admission, apparently. How does he get it? Because he says, your name won't be Yaakov anymore, your name will be Yisrael. And again, Rashi explains what he was saying was, Yaakov is a name that's associated with trickery. That again, he's called Yaakov because he grabbed onto the cave to the ankle, the heel of Esav when he was being born. But also, it's a language of tricking. It says that after Esav finds out that Yaakov took the blessings, he says, Yaakveni zeh pamayim, he's tricked me twice. He tricked me in getting the firstborn rights, and now he tricked me again. So Yaakveni is a language meaning Yaakov is a language of tricking, and what the angel is telling him now is your name won't be Yaakov anymore. It will now be Yisrael, which is a language of like power and authority, and in this context it will be like it's your right to have those blessings. Your name is Yisrael. We won't say anymore that you got it through trickery. It was your authority. It was your right to have those blessings. That's how Rashi explains this. So I want to take the rest of the time really to try to understand a bit more about this name change of Yaakov and Yisrael, because it's kind of confusing. Well, first of all, his name actually doesn't get changed right now. Later in the Parsha, God changes his name to Yisrael. But fine, that's a question I don't have an answer for. I didn't see any explanation that struck me of why. So what happened now? But the angel is it's a little bit in advance, but it's important to their conversation now that his status is going to change. But what is the difference between Yaakov and Yisrael? And really, if it's changed, why isn't it changed? We go back and forth. You go through the Torah, and sometimes we call him Yaakov, sometimes we call him Yisrael. Sometimes we as a people are called the children of Yaakov, sometimes we're called the children of Yisrael. So what is Yaakov and what is Yisrael? So the Gemara says, and I'm sorry I didn't put these additional sources on the source sheet, but the Gemara says in Brachos that if a person were to call, Avraham also had a name change. Avraham used to be Avram, and then he had the hey added and he became Avraham. So the Gemara says that it's forbidden to call him Avram. Again, if you're referring to like when he was called Avram, fine, but to say, oh, Avram, our forefather, the Gemara says that's forbidden. It says, it quotes two verses. Either it's a positive commandment because it says, "V'haya shimcha Avraham," your name shall be Abraham, and if you say otherwise, you're transgressing that. Or it's a negative prohibition because it says, "V'lo yikarei od shimcha Avraham," your name should no longer be called Avram, so you can't call him Avram anymore. You have to call him Avraham. So that's when it comes to Avram. It says the Gemara, you're not allowed to call him Avram. However, when it comes to Yaakov, it doesn't say that. And the Gemara asks, why not? It should be forbidden to call Yaakov anymore because his name was changed to Yisrael. So the Gemara says, no, there it's different because God continues to call him Yaakov even afterwards, many times. And therefore you're still allowed to call him Yaakov. So it seems like Yaakov's name change is different than Abraham's name change. Abraham's name change is total. You can't call him Avram anymore. Yaakov, you're still allowed to call him Yaakov. His name was changed, but it wasn't changed. It's like he got a second name now. So why is it different? So the Or HaChaim says, the Or HaChaim HaKadosh says that a person's name really speaks of their essence. He quotes source for that, but a name brings out the essence of a person. And Yaakov's name was Yaakov. And that's not going to change. Yaakov will continue to be Yaakov. But he now has something additional being added to him. It's like another soul almost. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it's almost like another soul. And so there's an addition, which is Yisrael, but you can't lose the Yaakov from his name. He says, but for Avraham, his name was Avram. But if you call him Avraham, you don't lose the original. The original is still there. Within Avraham is Avram. And so you're not losing his essential name when you call him Avraham. And therefore you have to call him Avraham, because that's his, that's with the addition, and that's all encompassing. But Yaakov, his name's still Yaakov. It's just he has this additional aspect to him, which is Yisrael. And sometimes it's fitting to call him Yaakov, and sometimes it's fitting to call him Yisrael. And then the question just becomes, when? When do we call him Yaakov? When do we call him Yisrael? So the Ohr HaChaim says in the beginning of Parshas Vayechi, Vayechi opens up, Vayechi Yaakov, Be'eretz Canaan. The last Parsha in Bereshis, it starts with, and Yaakov lived in the land of Canaan. So, sorry, in the land of Mitzrayim. I think, yeah. But it starts with Yaakov. Again, there's many places where it calls him Yaakov. And the Ohr HaChaim says, what's the deal? When do we call him Yaakov? And when do we call him Yisrael? It's not just random. So he points out, when it comes to the Jewish people as a nation, so there we have a pretty clear distinction between Yaakov and Yisrael. Yaakov is when we're not living up to our name, so to speak. We're called Yaakov as a people. When we're living up to our name, we're called Yisrael. He says the Zohar says that. He says, but that's not going to work for Yaakov Avinu. For the forefather Yaakov, he always was living up to his name, and therefore that can't be the distinction. So what is the distinction? When do we call him Yaakov? When do we call him Yisrael? Says the Ohr HaChaim, Yisrael represents an elevated version of Yaakov. This is the Yaakov 2.0. He's been elevated. That's why he gets this name added. And he says this elevated spiritual state can only exist and will exist when there's no sadness, no worry, no lowliness. He says you only find greatness in a place of joy, in a place of serenity. He says, for example, Shabbos. He says Shabbos is an example of this. Shabbos is a day of serenity, a day of menucha, and we get a neshama yisera on Shabbos. We get an extra neshama. It's like an additional neshama. It's an upgrade in neshama. But something's added. Something's added to our soul on Shabbos, because those two things come together. The joy and the serenity of Shabbos allow for an elevated state. But Yaakov, so Yaakov, when he's elevated, when he gets the name Yisrael, and he's only elevated in times when there's no sadness and rather there's joy. And he said, and when that's not there, so like when Shabbos ends, the neshama yisera goes away, the extra neshama goes away. So also with Yaakov, when that serenity is not there, when that joy is not there, so the extra neshama goes away, the extra soul goes away. He goes back to just being Yaakov. And he says that if you go through basically the rest of the book of Bereshis from here on out, you'll see that this pattern. And so, for example, he says, so at first, right now, he's generally called Yaakov, even though he's had his name changed. He's called Yaakov. That's because his mother dies. He's in Avelos. He's in mourning. Then later, Rachel dies. His wife dies. So times of sadness, he's called Yaakov. When he's in later, when he's in Parshas Vayeshev, so it's tough times. He's called Yaakov, except for specific times where it calls him Yisrael. For example, when it talks about how he loved Yosef. So he loved Yosef. It says V'Yisrael ahaves Yosef mikol banav. Yisrael loved Yosef for out of all his sons. So that's because that feeling of love, that joy, we call him Yisrael. Once Yosef is sold, He's never called Yisrael again, except for a few exceptions, and so some of those exceptions are because when he's showing authority, so he goes back to being Yisrael. Yisrael is also an expression of authority. Kisarisa, like the source of the name Yisrael is Kisarisa. You had power over, you had authority. So sometimes he's called Yisrael because of his authority over his children. Now, as soon as he finds out that Yosef is still alive, it says Vatechi Ruach Yaakov. His the spirit of Yaakov was returned, and then from then on, it's and Yisrael said, and Yisrael traveled, and God said to Yisrael, he has the name Yisrael until God tells him that they're going to go down to Egypt. And then when God tells him they're going to go down to Egypt, so then he's back to be calling Yaakov. Actually, Yaakov. He calls him Yaakov twice there. And then he's called Yaakov again until he meets up with Yosef again. And at that moment, he has this tremendous joy of the reunion with Yosef. And it says, Vayal Kras Yisrael Aviv, that Yosef went to greet his father Yisrael. And again, he's called Yisrael. And so Yaakov is associated with the times that Yaakov is sad, and in more difficult straits, and he can't reach his full elevated state. And when he's can reach his full elevated state when he's in times of joy, so then he's called Yisrael. Now, there are other explanations, not necessarily as thorough as the Orach Chaim to go through like piece by piece, but general statements. For example, when, like I said, when God comes to Yaakov and he tells him, you're about to go down to Egypt, so he calls him Yaakov. And the Ramban, their comments, that, again, he's telling him, you're not going to have the name Yisrael. You're not going to be able to overcome Elohim and Anashim, overcome angels and men in the next period of time. That was the name you got. That was the name you got when you fought the angel of Esav. But now you're about to go down to Egypt, and it's going to be the beginning of an exile. And when you're in exile in Egypt, you're Yaakov. When you're in exile in Egypt, you're not in your elevated state. You are Yaakov. The Malbim says that the name Yaakov implies things are natural, are normal, and perhaps because when Yaakov again is associated with like maneuvering and working through like in natural ways. Yisrael is elevated. You overcome. It's just like automatic. You overcome angels and men, and it's just given to you in an unnatural way. And he points us to a fascinating verse in the book of Melachim. In the book of Melachim, the book of Kings. So when Eliyahu Hanavi is having his showdown with the prophets of the Baal, so basically he challenges them to make an offering, and we'll see if God accepts the offering, and they try all day and no fire comes down, and then it's Eliyahu Hanavi's turn, and Eliyahu builds his own altar, and it says that he took 12 stones, Kimispar Shiftei B'nei Yaakov. He took 12 stones like the number of the tribes of the children of Yaakov. Asher hayad dvar Hashem elav lemor. Which Yaakov are we talking about? Says this is a verse in Melachim. The Yaakov to whom God said, Yisrael yiyashemecha. Your name will be Yisrael. It's such a strange pasuk. It's such a strange verse. In the middle of the story, it says that Eliyahu Hanavi took 12 stones corresponding to the number of the tribes of the children of Yaakov. Which Yaakov? The one to whom God said, your name will be Yisrael. Like, okay, like why is that happening? Why are we being told that now? And so the Malbim says, because the name Yisrael is the name that rises above nature. The name Yisrael is the name that says that the Yisrael, you, Yaakov, and the Jewish people, you're not bound by the natural course of things. And you're not bound by mazel. You're not bound by fate. And even if a stargazer can see that whatever's supposed to happen to you, you can overcome that. That's the power of Yisrael. And that's what Eliyahu Hanavi was trying to get across to these idolaters who were serving other powers, saying that God is above all powers. And that's what Yisrael represents. We as Yisrael can overcome any power if we attach ourselves directly to God. And so the name Yaakov is the name that the Ramban says is the name that we're associated with when we're in Galus, when we're in exile, when we're in Egypt. It's the name that when we're sad, when we can't reach our heights, we can't reach our elevated heights, and it's the name of when things are natural, when we don't have when we're not living above nature. The name Yisrael is the name of when we're elevated, when we're not, when we're of Geula, when we're in a state of redemption, and when we are, and when we're living in a way that's above nature. And really those two things, says Rav David Cohen, go together. The idea that in Galus, when we're in exile, things are God is working behind the scenes. God, outside the land of Israel, when we're in exile. So Yaakov, we're Yaakov. We have we are number one, it's the name associated with Galus, with exile, but it's also the name associated with that we're not living above nature. It's things happening in a natural way. Again, behind the scenes, God is working, pulling the strings, but they happen through natural means. The name of Yisrael is the name that's associated with times of Geula, of times of redemption, and that's also the name of that we're Saristayim Elohim Anashim. We can be higher than angels and higher than men. That we can we have the ability to rise above the natural. Again, that's because that's when, as Eliyahu Navi was trying to tell them, that when we attach ourselves to he was telling them, again, they were in Israel, they were in times of miracles, and he was telling them that if they attach themselves to Hashem, to God, so then instead of to these idols, these powers that God puts into play, they attach themselves directly to Hashem, then they can override any natural forces or unnatural forces in the world. So again, just to quickly summarize, again, these are very deep ideas that the commentaries get into when talking about Yaakov and Yisrael, and trying to make some sense of them. But as we look, there's certainly these patterns that present themselves, and we have different ideas about Yaakov being sadness, Yaakov being the name of Galus, name of exile, Yaakov being a name of the natural. Yisrael is a name that's associated with happiness and elevation, with redemption, and with living above the natural. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.